In the bustling heart of Los Angeles, a car dealership named Prestige Motors thrived under the leadership of its owner, Daniel Carter. Known for his shrewd business acumen and a knack for understanding customer needs, Daniel had built a successful empire from the ground up. However, one fateful day, he decided to take a different approach to understand his business better. Dressed in a worn baseball cap, a faded hoodie, and scuffed jeans, Daniel parked his old sedan a few blocks away from the dealership. He wanted to experience the dealership from a customer's perspective, so he blended in with the crowd of everyday shoppers. As he walked towards the dealership, he felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. Today, he would be just Dan, an average buyer looking for a reliable car. Upon entering the showroom, the sun glinted off the polished glass displays, illuminating the sleek vehicles that lined the floor. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and chatter as employees greeted customers with smiles. Daniel pushed through the glass doors, and the receptionist, a sharply dressed woman named Lisa, looked up, her expression quickly shifting from welcoming to indifferent. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone lacking enthusiasm. "Hi, I'm looking for a mid-range sedan," Daniel replied casually. "Something reliable, maybe pre-owned. I'm on a bit of a budget." Lisa's brow arched slightly, her condescension palpable. "Pre-owned?" she echoed, as if the term was foreign. "Let me see if someone can assist you." She barely glanced behind her before summoning a salesman named Mark. Mark strutted over, coffee in hand, his tailored suit contrasting sharply with Daniel's casual attire. He scanned Daniel from head to toe, a look of disdain creeping across his face. "Hey there," Mark said, smirking. "Let's see what we have that fits your budget." As Mark led Daniel to the back of the showroom, he barely offered any information about the vehicles they passed. "This one here is affordable," he said, pointing to a dented sedan. "It gets the job done. Probably what you're looking for, right?" Daniel frowned, feeling the sting of mockery. "I was hoping for something with a warranty and fewer miles," he replied, maintaining his composure. Mark's smirk widened. "With your budget? You might want to adjust your expectations," he chuckled, taking a sip of his coffee. Frustration bubbled within Daniel, but he kept his tone steady. "I'd still like to know about the warranty options." Mark laughed under his breath. "Tell you what, when you've got a little more cash, come back, and I'll show you something nicer," he said, clearly dismissing Daniel. Feeling insulted, Daniel stepped away, his anger simmering. As he wandered further into the dealership, he noticed other salespeople avoiding eye contact, redirecting their attention to better-dressed customers. It was as if he were invisible, merely a source of amusement rather than a potential buyer. As he walked past the luxury SUV section, he overheard Mark snickering with another salesman. "Look at that guy in the hoodie. He probably doesn't even have a credit score," Mark joked, making Daniel's blood boil. This wasn't just poor customer service, it was outright disrespect. Determined to find a quieter corner, Daniel moved toward the janitorial area where he encountered an older man named Frank, who was diligently organizing cleaning supplies. Frank's name tag read Frank, and he greeted Daniel with a warm smile. "Hey there, need any help?" Frank asked, pausing in his work. "I'm okay, thanks," Daniel replied, trying to sound casual. "You seem busy." "Always am," Frank said, his voice friendly. "A clean space keeps everything running smoothly." As they spoke, Daniel noticed a service manual for a high-end sports car tucked away behind Frank's cart. "You a fan of cars?" Daniel asked, nodding toward the manual. Frank hesitated for a moment before shrugging. "You could say that. I used to be a mechanic before this job." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "What made you stop?" "Life happened," Frank replied with a faint smile. "Business went under, and bills piled up. A man does what he has to do." Intrigued, Daniel asked, "Do you still keep up with fixing cars?" "Now and then," Frank admitted. "A lot of new models are over-engineered, but once you grasp the basics, they aren't so different." Like that SUV over there, the X4 Hybrid. Most don't realize it has a factory issue with its fuel injector system. If you don't catch it early, it can cause headaches. Daniel blinked, surprised that he hadn't heard any of the sales team mention that issue all day. "How do you know that?" he inquired. "I read manuals, forums, whatever I can find. If I can't work on cars anymore, I at least want to stay informed," Frank explained, pride seeping into his voice. Before Daniel could ask more, Mark's voice cut through the air. "Frank, quit slacking off and get back to work," he barked, his tone dismissive. Max's mind raced. Here was a janitor with more knowledge about cars than most of the salespeople, yet he was treated like an afterthought. As Daniel continued to observe, he saw Frank quietly assisting confused customers, providing practical advice that surpassed anything the sales team offered. This was the tipping point for Daniel. Tomorrow, he would expose the toxic culture of his dealership and highlight Frank's hidden talents. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the dealership, but this time he wasn't blending in. Gone were the faded clothes. Instead, he wore a tailored suit and stepped out of a sleek black sports car, one of his own models. He radiated authority, the confidence of a man who owned it all. Inside, the staff were already busy. The moment Daniel entered, the energy in the room shifted. A few employees paused mid-conversation, their eyes widening in recognition. "Mr. Carter!" Lisa exclaimed, nearly knocking over her coffee as she stood up. Daniel offered a polite smile, but his gaze was sharp. "Good morning. Can you call the team to the showroom floor? I need to speak with everyone." Lisa's face paled as she nodded and reached for the phone. Daniel had sent a memo weeks earlier about conducting anonymous observations as part of a new quality control initiative. The staff had been warned that inspectors could pose as customers at any time. Clearly, they had ignored the warning. Within minutes, the entire team assembled in the showroom, their expressions a mix of confusion and nervousness. Mark stood at the front, attempting to maintain his usual bravado, but there was an unmistakable hint of unease in his posture. "Good morning, everyone," Daniel began, his voice calm but commanding. "I wanted to thank you all for the hospitality you showed me yesterday." A murmur spread through the group as realization dawned on them. "I was just a regular customer looking for a car and observing how things operate around here," Daniel continued, his lips curving into a tight smile. The shock rippled through the staff. Mark's smirk vanished, replaced by disbelief. "That was you?" he stammered. "Yes," Daniel affirmed, his gaze sweeping over the group. "And what I saw yesterday was disappointing to say the least." Daniel turned to Frank, who stood clutching a mop in the back. "Frank, would you mind stepping forward?" Frank hesitated, surprised, but slowly approached the front. Daniel addressed the group. "This man showed more knowledge, kindness, and professionalism in a single day than some of you have shown in years." Frank looked startled, his hands clenching nervously. "I just do my job," he said quietly. Daniel continued, "But your knowledge hasn't faded. You noticed issues with the X4 Hybrid that even our trained staff failed to mention. Your willingness to help customers without expecting anything in return embodies the spirit of this dealership." As Daniel's gaze shifted to Mark, the tension in the room thickened. "And then there's you, Mark. Yesterday, you insulted a customer for asking about financing. You mocked me and humiliated Frank publicly." Mark's bravado crumbled. "I didn't know it was you," he protested weakly. "That's the problem," Daniel interjected. "You assumed that because I didn't look wealthy, I wasn't worth your time. How many other customers have you treated the same way?" Mark fell silent, unable to meet Daniel's gaze. "I saw plenty of you ignoring customers, prioritizing appearances over service, doing the bare minimum. This isn't the dealership I built, and it ends today." Turning back to Frank, Daniel's tone softened. "Frank, you've been here for years, haven't you?" "Almost 5, Frank replied hesitantly. Has anyone ever acknowledged your expertise or your dedication to helping people? Daniel asked. Frank shook his head. No, sir. I just figured it wasn't my place. Starting today, Daniel said firmly, you're not the janitor anymore.